Hi everyone, thank you very much. Can you hear me well? Great. As Kathy said, I'm Sofía Isasmendi. I'm the head of programs and partnership in B-Lab Spain, and I'm very honored to be here moderating this session, which will happen in two different moments. We will first have a part of the session in English with two guests, and then we're going to continue the conversation with three other powerful and yet very inspiring women, and that part is going to be in Spanish. This panel, as Kathy was saying, is called Sustainability Sisterhood, Companies for Change, and it's an opportunity for us to reflect on the role of women into the transition of sustainable business models, the role of women and how are they being included in the conversations and how their voices are being heard. Women want to be heard. They want to be part of the conversations and they want to be in leadership positions. This can be exhausting, can be challenging, and at times overwhelming, given we're part of a minority and we're trying to tackle complicated issues. This year's World Economic Forum's Global Gap Gender showed us that we have closed the gap by 68% this year. This is a good number, and it's an indicator of a slight improvement compared to previous periods, but it's also a number that tells us we have a long way to go. At the current rate progress, it would take us over 132 years to reach global parity. This is something we need to start working on with urgency and advocating for parity locally and also on a global stage. Studies have shown that the way women think and the way women behave is key into the diversity of leaderships that we need in order to move towards sustainable development. Antonio Guterres, General Secretary of State, has this quote that I really like that says, "Today, women's leadership is a cause, tomorrow it should be the norm." Now it is time for women's voices to be fully heard, and decisions on this field need to be bravely made. This is not only the right thing to do, it's also the smart thing to do. As I said, we will start our session with two guests, so please everyone help me welcome Samata, Pattinson and Dulma Clark into the stage. Welcome.
I'll go the other side. Oh, okay.
Well, first of all, thank you for being here. I understand you have shared some conversations before, so this is great. We're going to have a distended and comfortable conversation, of course, and we would love the public to be part of it. So as we speak, if you have some questions and doubts or comments or even reflections, we will have some time at the end of their conversation for you to be able to participate more actively. First of all, let's start with a small introduction of yourselves. Samata, I will with you.
Thank you.
You are in the battle of fixing the waste and inequality behind our clothes. Samata is a British-born Ghanaian writer, broadcaster, entrepreneur, and also an award-winning design. You are the CEO of Red Carpet Green Dress, which is a women-led change-making organization that brings sustainability to the forefront of the fashion and the apparel industry. You're also leading lots of conversations globally to talk and reflect on how fashion can become a more positive force across value chains from local communities to craftspeople of global brands. Welcome and thank you very much for being here. How are you today?
Thank you so much. That's such a nice introduction.
That's why you are. Welcome, welcome. Today we're going to be sharing our panel with Dulma. Dulma, I will have to introduce you as well, and everyone get ready because she's also very inspiring and her personal trajectory is full of collaborations, initiatives, and projects. But let's start with the basics. So you have a degree in human rights and you are passionate about social business and indigenous wisdom. At the moment, you are in the battle of regenerating human and planetary health. You need to tell us about that, please. You are the brand impact amplification lead at Vivobarefoot, a certified B-Corp that manufactures wood footwear in order to reconnect people to nature and their human natural potential. Thank you so much. Just a fun fact about her is that she's also a champion, let's clap, but she's a champion of Russia in archery. So welcome very much and thank you for being here. So as we were preparing this conversation, we agreed that it'd be interesting to start by reflecting on your own personal journeys and what happened in your life, in your story, in order to make you become who you are today. I would like to know if it's a conversation that you had, a person that inspired you, or maybe it's part of a longer process that happened at an earlier stage of your life. Could you share us a little bit about that?
Okay, I'll go. I think so. I'm a British-born Ghanaian of two parents who essentially came to England to further their education. My dad was the first one in his family to do a PhD at Cambridge University, the son of a chief. And so growing up, I was always surrounded by this idea that education is such a privilege. And I think anyone who has access to education, like I did growing up in Cambridge, is given the opportunity to learn about other people and the way that things were done before, people who came before you. And if you learn about people who came before you, you find out about the small and big ways that people have made a difference. So this idea of making a difference to me was always just surrounded in the household, because you'd pick up a book and you'd learn about someone. You'd go to a talk with your dad at college and you'd learn about someone. So I've just always been inquisitive, and I've always wanted to know about the world and how it works, and people who came before and people that can come after. And I think that really defines me. I've never been defined by materialistic stuff. Like, with all my friends and my social circle, it's not about having things. I'm always curious to know, like, well, what do you know and what can I learn from you? So if I were to try and define myself, that would be the easiest way to say I'm just on a journey to understand people, planet, and everything in between.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is this working?
Yeah, I don't think it's
Is it not working?
So,
Can we
is it
please
working?
have some help with her microphone?
Is working?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi.
We can now hear you well.
Oh, amazing. I can hear myself. Thank you so much, Cassie, for the invitation, and thank you so much, Mike, in the room here, who made it happen. So the stories, I was thinking about it quite a lot because there were several defining moments. I grew up in basically literally in the middle of nowhere, in a village in Siberia, village of about 250 people. So we didn't have any hot water, electricity, nothing. It's a self-subsistent farming. So the only thing you can do is, there was, kids would go to look after the cattle, and it was a rotational thing to do. So every week, it was my turn, and then you go and you basically a whole day in the field. So what do you do while you're in the field? You read. So in that case, after several years of doing that, I finished the local library. And then at the age of 13, because it was very traditional community, now at the age of 30, now I feel I'm very blessed that this upbringing that I went through, it was very, very special. But at that time when I was 13 and I was questioning the world and I was reading a lot of these adventure books, especially I remember Jules Verne, books about treasure hunting and all of that, I'm like, oh, I want to be the adventurer, the spaceship person or whatever. And then, because it was very traditional society, like very Buddhist, shamanic community, beautiful, beautiful. But I kind of rebelled against it, and I knew that maybe my parents didn't take it well if I say, can I like live to the city to pursue education? Education was something very prestigious and something like, wow, like if you can get university degree, it's like their dream. So I had hair like this long. And then I went and shaved it off and came to my mom. And because she was so shocked by the situation, and when I said, can I have £5 to go to the city to do the exam to the boarding school, there was like basically she only had to say yes. So
Please do.
Please do, welcome. So yeah, and then I remember my mom said, yeah, let the ancestors be with you, and we'll always be here, and they're still in the village farming, and and then I kind of embarked on the journey, which is still a journey. I'm still learning what is to be human, what makes life, and then we're here on a very specific period of time. So I went through like a lot of personal, heavy stories from, I studied human rights and did law degree because in this post-Soviet Union Russia, I saw a lot of violence and corruption and sadness, but then at the same time coming from very beautiful cultural background, it didn't like make sense. It's just like there was this big gap, why it's so beautiful here, and then suddenly you see all this darkness of human nature. And then I decided to study law to learn how to effectively break it and don't go into prison. And the other version is like, okay, so law is part of basically every single sector. So if you learn, and it was later I learned that it was all about actually interconnectedness. And this is how nature works, but we'll come to that maybe a bit later. But yeah, so maybe I'll stop there.
Thank you both very much. Okay. As we were saying as I introduced the session, trying to tackle the problems that you're fighting for, it's exhausting, it's complicated, so it's always good to reflect on what happened to make you become who you are, but also like, I wonder, where do you recharge your batteries? What's the space or the people, or what's the thing that makes you reconnect to that internal vision and that keeps you active in this journey?
Good question. For me, I think it's kind of, first of all, there's always that element of family and friends and just remembering who you are and where you come from. And I think in the noise of today's society, in a society that almost benefits from distancing people from those things, for me, that's how I do it. I have to reconnect with family. It could be calling up a relative in Ghana. It could be spending time with my sister. I mean, one of my kind of no-brainer go-tos is to go outside. Like, I have to spend time with nature. That's simple, but it's effective. But I think what recharges me is like I have these 4 almost pillars in my head as per why I'm doing what I'm doing. And like for me, first of all, especially in this space of sustainability, it's demystifying the space. I feel that it's almost a theft of opportunity, that there are people who are not present in conversations, in rooms, or given access to opportunities simply because they don't understand. And so a lot of how sustainability operates is by keeping the space quite mystical through language, through structures. And so for me, breaking that down and keeping it, like simplifying it and making it accessible is a motivator for me. Another thing that motivates me as well, apart from demystifying, is challenging stereotypes. If I try and relax and then I kind of sit back and I read a newspaper, I turn on the news, and I hear certain language, it like energizes me again. Why are you using those words to describe those people? Why are you saying poor Africans? Why are you saying, immigrant or expat, depending on the color of that person's skin? Why are you doing that? So that idea of like challenging stereotypes is energizing for me. Again, it kind of fills my energy up again because I know it needs to be done. And even what's happening here, the fact that we're here in Barcelona having this conversation is decentering the conversation because so much of it happens in the same places with the same people. So again, just having the opportunity to travel and have rich conversations with people here or in the global south where we know so much kind of experience and knowledge is energizing as well. And then finally, I would say the other thing that just recharges me is the idea that we can't let history be rewritten. We can't allow contributors of sustainability, the people who have shaped where we are now, indigenous knowledge holders, to be written out of history. So energizing is kind of making sure that we're pushing forward names like Wangari Maathai, the first African woman to win a Nobel Peace Prize, who started the Greenbelt movement in 1977. And this is a movement we're now popularizing, but this has been done 40 years ago. So even though those might seem like kind of not combative, but things that might give you concern, for my personality type, remembering those things is really, really energizing because it's like, okay, this is why we need to be here. This is why we need to be doing what we're doing. Yeah.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Would you like to add anything to that question?
What energizes me? So I find myself very lucky for finding literally finding joy in work that I do. So I wish everybody could find that space. That's what energizes me. Like I'm like up and ready and up and running like 6 a.m. Okay, what we're gonna do today? So, and then obviously the family and the friends, and I'm really grateful for all the community that surrounds me. And but the big moment was actually reconnection to self. So from very early age, a lot of things that I've been doing was a lot about giving. And I think it's a very feminine or female trait, as like kind of the motherhood that comes into place, and this kind of sort of borderless love and generosity. And then more you give, like the energy comes back again. But then at some point I realized, like, where is this self-love and what does it mean to be content within yourself and stay grounded? If you are happy and found this balanced, content space within yourself, then it multiplies even more. So it was like almost, I believe, a 10-year journey, because at the same time I was a carer for my husband who was very ill. He had multiple sclerosis, and then we had children, and then the work, but then how do you stay sane with all these things that are happening on a daily basis? And this is one of the sort of moments being a woman, because it's like a work, life, and everything gets very complicated. But you can manage it if you have this sort of core centeredness. So I did a lot of spiritual retreats, and there was a lot of crying and screaming and you name it, a lot of puking and basically
puking as well. Yeah. Noted.
And smelling the grass and looking at the little insects for hours. But the point is, like, I was essentially shortcutting, right? So I could sit there and meditate for hours to get to that serene space, but it was not possible with all the lives that were surrounding. But after all these journeys and trials and errors, one experience was profound, which was almost like literally like a month ago. And there was the first ceremony, so to say. I went with the Mayan elders. They were, like half of my size, all looking, and they didn't speak English, so they were like doing the mantras in a native language, which was like so incredible thing to hear, because I myself come from the indigenous community and my language is disappearing. My mother tongue is not going to be here in 50 years' time. That's basically the prediction, because my generation was the last one that was taught the native language, and it was beautiful to hear the native language of the Mayan elders. But then this session was the first time I went to explore the femininity, or like what is to be a woman. And there was a lot of crying again, but there was a lot of this innate love that is in abundance, and we're just kind of being aware of it. That was kind of the big lesson, and then this is a type of hero moment that you you experience, and then makes kind of this hero moment, make your hero, like make up your life, or like you build memories like that, and then suddenly you're going to be 100 years old, and then life was good.
Thank you very much for sharing.
Thanks.
So now we'd like to move forward towards not only why you do it or what happened to you for doing what you're doing at the moment, but on your view of what's the impact that you're interested in making in the world. And what do you think needs to happen in order for it to be achieved?
If I think about kind of the impact that, for me, is a driving force right now, I feel that that's evolved over time, by the way, because I started my sustainability journey, and I think I started at birth, like growing up in a household where literally nothing was wasted. A lot of the things we talk about now, I kind of grew up with. My mum going to secondhand shops, and this is specifically to the fashion industry as an example, but she would go to John Lewis and get her patterns, make outfits for me and my two sisters. Like, I grew up with these kind of ways of doing things. Like, if she had a plastic bag, it was a shower cap, it was the bin bag. It was just everything was used to the fullest of its life, and then it was for someone else. And that was just the way we grew up. So I've always had sustainability around me, and I think every single person in this room has, if I'm being honest. We've all had examples of it around us, but maybe we just haven't used the language. But if I think about what it was when I started my journey knowingly, and that was basically being a former clothing designer, as you mentioned, who won a competition. And I won that competition by chance. I went onto Vogue and it said, can you design a gown for the red carpet with a sustainable twist? And I'd never heard the word sustainable with fashion before, and I was like, what's this? So I put a sketch together, and then I just decided I would use like organic fabric and dye it with cranberries, and I submitted my concept. And then 11 days later, I get a phone call, and I had no idea who was behind the initiative, but it turned out it was James Cameron, the director of Titanic and Avatar, and his wife, Susie Amos Cameron, and they said, you've got 11 days to make a dress and come to LA. So I'm like running around, like looking for cranberries and, dyeing it in the bathtub. Like, it was a concept I hadn't trialed.
That's great.
You know, I was raiding my mum's wardrobe because I'd said in my sketch, I'm going to use vintage beads because vintage and secondhand is such a big part of the conversation. Why can't we love again what we loved before? So I made this dress. So at the beginning, the idea of impact was from a design perspective. How can we design better? Like, how can we, you know, make things that are considering people, considering planet, and not just considering them, but actually nurturing them and honoring them. So I flew with this dress. So at the beginning, for Red Carpet Green Dress, I was walking down the carpet with Susie and James Cameron for the Avatar premiere thing, and the questions were all about design. And that was what my framework was. I was thinking about who are we making it for? How are we making it? How are we minimizing negative impact? How are we reducing waste? How are we making waste food for something else? How are we designing for all bodies, all shapes, disabled community, plus-size community? How are the materials and dyes we're using affecting people's personal bodies and biospheres? So that impact was about changing the way designers do things. But over time, it's really evolved, and I think the impact I look at now is how can we make this conversation representative of different cultures? Because I realize now that me saying to somebody, giving advice, and they say, well, how can I be more sustainable? Me turning around and saying, buy better, choose well, make it last. Okay, to a certain demographic, that might make sense if they have the disposable income to do that. But to somebody who doesn't have that disposable income, I'm almost leaving them out of the conversation. Or to a culture that's been doing that for centuries, I'm ignoring their contributions. So now I'm in this kind of wider space of how can I travel the globe, how can I interact with people from different cultures, learn from them, and take the way that they view sustainability and amplify that and give them honor, give them credit, give them compensation. So I think my impact is more focused on that, which is why being here, or just knowing that there are conversations that look at, I was talking to a friend about how in Japan, there used to be these traveling menders that would go from village to village and take damaged kimonos, damaged garments, mend them and then return them. And in Ghana, we have a similar thing that happened. And we see fashion brands applying that now. We're seeing seamstresses and cobblers being introduced into Selfridges, into Harrods. This idea of bring us your stuff, we'll fix it and we'll give it back to you. To me, that's a cultural sustainability transient element that's just moved. So I think if we can always apply a cultural lens to the conversations we're having and think about how do they do it here? How can we involve them? How can we position them as teachers, as leaders? And then how can we learn from them and honor them? Then I think the impact will be not only incredible, but it will be authentic. And it won't erase people that are having to sit on the sidelines and act like they haven't been in this conversation the whole time. So I hope that answers your question, but to me, that cultural element is literally the bedrock of how I want to be doing things going forward, period.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
And for you, Dulma, what's the impact you're trying to make in the world, and how do you canalize that impact at your current places where you work, where you occupy, where you make decisions?
I would like to take this question. There are three areas that I think where we're trying to make impact. So one is more like philosophical level around what makes us human, and the mission of the company that we have. Like I'm part of the family company called Vivobarefoot, and we're on a mission to reconnect people to nature and human natural potential, and it starts from the ground up. So we make basically shoes. But we don't make just normal shoes how we see it. The footwear industry produces 22, 24 billion pairs a year. 90+% of those shoes end up in landfill within the first year of production. And if you look into supply chains, the toxicity, the logistics, and you name it, plus the end of life, the repairability, I can't believe the massive companies that have way more than money that we do haven't come up with a better system of take back and repair. So we actually launched in 2019 the first of its kind repair system, and all the sort of technologies on the back end that goes into like taking back the products, etc. So it's called Revivo. It's all working now. And which means it's basically doable. Why other companies are not doing that? That's kind of question what you're buying. So that's from the industry perspective. That the human nature thing around what makes us human. and sort of the story of reconnecting to the ground since our feet actually an extraordinary piece of tooling of our body, which we're normally not very aware of. It almost contains 100,000 plus nerve endings. It's an amazing proprioceptory organ. It's the same amount of nerve endings as your hands, so you wouldn't put your hands in like stiff gloves and try to it wouldn't be able to move, etc. So it would be uncomfortable. So yeah, this is the simplest way of explaining it. And why then we need to put our feet into stiff, narrow, padded footwear that disconnects us from the ground, and also on top of it doesn't let ourselves to move naturally. So all these different questions come into place. And then that journey led us to the Kalahari Desert to meet the Johansi San community, who are persistent hunters, because there was all these questions around the design, the human biology, like how the body moves, the anatomy of things. And then we worked with the San people to learn how to move. And on top of it, we also found out that they've been making this hunting sandals they've been doing for many, many generations. So everybody sitting here, if you went back to your ancestral lineage and then looked at your oldest ancestor, you're probably going to be looking at the eye of the sun person. So, and then we evolved as hunter-gatherers, but one of the things was persistent hunting. So we're the only animals who can outrun the other animal. So maybe that's the way, in theory, maybe this is the way how we got our first protein, by basically collapsing the other animal by exhaustion. And then the first thing we created was the sandal. So this sandal exists, and it was about to disappear because it was this only one person, the elder of the community. God knows how old he is, but if he passed away next day, we wouldn't know how to do it. So we're like, let's sit together and work together, and we preserve this craftsmanship. Why I'm telling this long story? Because it connects back to the modern environment. Because on the logic how we used to make shoes at that time, and then with the coming of the Industrial Revolution that created all these unhealthy designs, again, to give quick statistics, we're all born with healthy feet. In the US alone, there are 600,000 foot surgeries that happen every year, and most of them are women. And I believe because it's all, high heels and wearing this type of looking weird shoes. I don't know who invented that. You're roughly wearing the same, so be careful.
I'm like, am I okay today? Are my feet fine? So many nerves.
But it's like it's money-making machine, and then to basically create this, to kind of tackle all of that, we're now developing a new technology that basically utilizes the same logic, how we used to make footwear foot by foot, person by person, from locally sourced material. And the third Tim Speed was talking about, I don't know if he's here, talking about the 3D printing and localized manufacturing, which is basically, we're launching that concept and trialing this coming March. It's called Vivobarefoot, and it's never been done before. It's like 360 offering on creation of the localized communities and localized manufacturing with the personalized designs, with all the research and data that we've created over the last 10 years working with the indigenous communities. So look out for that. But these are some of the mission stuff that we're working on. And just to add two more things, we're also looking into how businesses set up in the first place, because the old school way of thinking how businesses are run not really fit for purpose right now. So you probably all know what the Patagonia news. So we work on this, on the principles called the regenerative leadership and regenerative business. I won't go much into that, but have a look at the book called Leading by Nature. And if you have time, have a look at our annual report, which is called Unfinished Business, because it's never ending. And maybe that can, maybe it can inspire you with some thinking in your own field. Thank you.
Thank you. We have recommendations too included. So we have a few minutes left. I'm going to pop one more question, and then maybe we can quickly receive also some questions from the public. So there's one thing that it's ongoing in this conversation, and it's about who's in the conversation. How can we reflect on the integration of a cultural perspective? How can we make sure that we include other voices and the knowledge and the wisdom that they have, right? So from your perspective, given you have this international background, in regards to your industry, do you believe feminism has broken the glass ceiling? Are women being included in conversations? What's your perspective of Who's been included, and how can we make this conversation even more inclusive and diverse?
Okay, I'll try and do like a 30-second of whatever. I think there's two parts to that question. First of all, around the glass ceiling, I think that was the first part of the question. A glass ceiling to me is something you can't see until you get close to it. So you're kind of shooting up because it's transparent, and then you reach this thing that kind of stops you breaking through to the next level. I don't think there is a glass ceiling. I think there's a black cement ceiling because we know it's there and we can see it from here. And I think that's one of the biggest issues for me about this conversation is, like, in one degree, we know that women will be 47% of the workforce in 2 years. And we know that we occupy all different roles across all different industries. We know we tend to, on average, kind of earn less pay, face gender discrimination. There's just a whole catalogue of things we could list, from being a working mum, to being a woman of colour, to being a young girl, whatever that is. And we know that even if you look at like Fortune 1000, it's 12% women, Fortune 500, 40 women, 3 black. So there are so many issues there. Do I think there are women in spaces that are trailblazing? Definitely. There's Kathy over there trailblazing. There's Aurora James with the 15% pledge. There's Susie Amos-Cameron with RCGD Global. There's countless women I could name who are trailblazing in the space. But they don't have the infrastructural support to kind of create industry-wide change because we're doing it within a system that needs to be broken down itself. And I think the reason we know that feminism hasn't broken through any glass ceilings is because when a crisis happens, whether it's the pandemic or it's Black Lives Matter or whatever it is, who is most negatively affected? If it's a food crisis, if it's access to sexual health and reproductive rights, whether it's access to education, whatever that is, women. So to say, have we broken through a glass ceiling? It's cement, we can't, and no, I don't think we have. But are there women who are kicking ass and trailblazing? Yes. But do they need infrastructural support to make those changes for all women? 100%. That's the best I can do in the time.
Thank you so much. No, that was very consistent. Thank you very, very much.
I'm not sure I can add anything, but all the women in the room include, and as I was kind of mentioning before, when I did my first sort of feminine reconnection thing, because I work in a business very dominated by men, plus being not a native speaker, plus looking kind of teenager, didn't help. That doesn't help, basically. But I do believe being an authentic and channeling joy and love to people, because at the end of the day, everybody is a human being. So just connect with them heart to heart, and then if somebody is being basically difficult person to you, I nearly used a very bad word, then just imagine them naked and kind of some poop on the head or something like that, they will be fine. So, this is this person's life, okay, fine, just give them a bit of compassion and empathy and move on. So.
I'm going to do that poop on the head thing.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much. We ran out of time. I'm sorry I did bring too many questions, but if there's any short questions that we could ask for them at the moment as we finalize this session, I would like to hear that. But we do need to keep it a little bit short. I'm very sorry about that too.
Oh,
so, is there...
the mic dress, yellow dress.
Yes, can we... There's another microphone, great. Thank you very much.
I just want to, first of all, thank you both. That was just fantastic and incredible. I wanted to ask you both about young women, young men, children, youth, and with the experiences you've had, the kinds of learning and education that you think young people should be having now, so that their perspectives of the feminine and the experiences of women are different than the ones that we've had so far?
Such a good question. Do you want to go first? Because I don't.
I think I need time to think about it.
Okay.
Well, I think I'm not sure how to take it from like brand perspective or is Dulma as a human being, but at the end of the day, it's all about raising the children. I mean, basically the existing education system is broken. That's I think everybody probably would agree with that. And the second thing is, as parents or the communities around it, or like looking after the children, the best thing probably you could do is to take them to nature as much as possible. Let them free play, follow the sun, sort of like build the basic stuff around learning around the, okay, not maybe that basic, food, healthy food, water. There's all these baseline things how to give the kickstart for a healthy body, and then it comes in all the healthy mind situation, which is a whole another beast. And then I think I'm not even sure how best to go to the education thing, because it all needs to be reorganized completely and looked through interdisciplinary lens. And yeah, hopefully it can be resolved within our lifetime. I've got 2 children, 6 and 9, so I'm doing my best, but it's not easy because it's like structure itself is messed up.
Yeah, I would just add on to that. I would say one of the things we feel is quite important is intercepting what I think is happening right now, which is this selling to young minds, younger and younger. I find it really worrying. I know we have like TikTok influencers who are like 6, and just this idea that we're kind of accessing these young minds really early with this idea that they have to be performative, they have to gain they have to gain all of these things to be considered worthy. And so I think the interception of that and the disconnection from the digital, I think the importance of being able to connect around the world is important, but also making sure we don't lose those traditional ways of connecting with people, especially like as young minds. And I agree with Dulma, like we do a lot of work with young people with mentoring, with work experience, and making sure that they have like the practical skills, but we're also giving self-esteem training, helping them to see what's actually happening when a brand is telling you that this is out and this is in, like what's happening to you psychologically, and to just give them the tools so that they can say, no, I'm happy with how I am, I'm happy with how I look, I'm happy with where I come from, and also facilitating more cross-generational knowledge transfer. We did this great thing with Billie Eilish, her mother, and it was about Billie Eilish's mother talking to Billie about what sustainability meant to her when she was growing up, and Billie redefining it with what it means to her as a young person, because we still have so much to learn within our families. And when you talked about that person who had the knowledge of the shoes, you know, they say that when an old person passes away, a library burns to the ground. We have to connect young people with the elders of their communities and other communities as soon and as often as we can, because there's nothing that they can't kind of give us that will give us the tools to be able to face all of these unprecedented challenges that as adults we're still trying to figure out. Like I feel clueless to how much they feel, you know? So if that did make sense.
Thank you very much. Well, I'm very sorry we ran out of time. Thank you for this fantastic conversation. I felt we went through a journey which started near like reflecting on the importance of connecting, understanding who we are from a broader perspective, bringing up all these identitary and essentials elements that make up our story, but from a bigger perspective, taking into consideration how that reflects on education and how we are also influencing and impacting people, and that also how you're able to translate all these personal stories to organizations that are actively working towards changing the world and fixing the future. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
It was lovely. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. ¡Qué potente! Y esto no se acaba.
How powerful, and it's not over. Now on to the second part of this conversation. We will have the opportunity of getting to know more women who are in positions of power, leadership, and they will share with us the challenges of promoting sustainability within the organizations they work at. We will have Andrea, Castaño, Blázquez, and Pilar Chiva. Welcome.
Bienvenidas. Bueno, esta parte la vamos a hacer en castellano, pero igual estaría bueno también.
It will be in Spanish, but maybe we can find some connections also with the conversation that we just had. So without further ado, I will start. I will briefly introduce each of you, briefly, so we have some time to talk. Andrea, I'll start with you, if that's okay. Chemical engineer committed to the planet. I think that is a very strong way of introducing you, understanding you, and understanding that from the very beginning there's something that you've been in contact with, which is how to align the fight against climate change in the different spaces where you've been. You co-founded an organization in Barcelona which was about mobilizing citizens around waste reduction and positive change through education and community participation. And today, specifically, you are leading climate action programs at the Barcelona Water Company. Could you, in a few minutes, tell us about the impact you aim to create in the world and how you channel that within the water company? First of all, if you can hear me all right, well, thank you for this opportunity to be here and to talk to all of you in this wonderful space. As a personal mission, I would say I want to contribute to the most of my ability to accelerate climate action, both personally in my closer circle and professionally, so that I can go beyond and I can accelerate climate action with the territory and in the territory. And I would love to have as many people as possible know the context where we live, how we've gotten to this climate emergency, and how can we have an impact. Because we need to reformulate how we live. And I would like to materialize all sorts of activities and projects that have a true impact and that help us mitigate and adapt to climate change. And from the Barcelona Water Company, we have a climate action policy impacting on these three axes: mitigation, adaptation, and capacity building in climate aspects. And the aim is to accelerate climate action with a strategic vision, generating evidence, in the end, well, working in collaboration with the entire ecosystem, because in the end, this is a global challenge, and we cannot do this in isolation. We will not succeed as islands. Okay, so now, Carol, I would like to define you as a fighter and activist for sustainability in the fashion industry and a fan of the EcoAlf. I'm a fan of the EcoAlf movement. It's a B-Corp certified movement. You're head of innovation and sustainability. So innovation at the service of sustainability, in this specific case in EcoAlf. And in a way, you aim at having garments that are better for the planet and the people within EcoAlf. You have tackled very big projects, B-Corp certification, carbon neutrality commitment, and I understand you're involved with the EcoAlf Foundation, which has the purpose of cleaning our oceans and transforming pet waste into high-quality fabrics and threads that reinsert into the economy. Circular economy, again, we were talking to Samata and Dulma, and they talked about design, so it's interesting how if you can tell us about this from the perspective of EcoAlf. What's the impact you aim to generate, and how do you experience this at EcoAlf? Well, I have not yet found the answer. Probably the fact that I'm here today is the non-answer to that question, and having questioned everything my entire life, I got to fashion because I understand fashion as a form of expression, as something that connects with you and makes you communicate and express yourself and relate to others. And there I got into the world of fashion, and I started questioning everything because I thought it was like a horror film. How was it possible for that glamour that had looked so enticing to me, so appealing from the outside, how it changes from within, and when you see everything behind that. And all of a sudden you say, oh wow, is this really necessary? Is it really necessary that for us to be well dressed or for us to wear something that we identify with, we need to damage the planet this much? And there I started asking questions, my head started spinning, and then I got to that personal purpose that connects with my professional purpose of, well, that comes from this idea of questioning everything. As I say, I oftentimes feel like I'm a problem solver. Through all of those questions, I reach challenges that I try to give solutions to, and at the moment I'm in the world of fashion because I started in the world of fashion, and all of these years of experience have trained me in seeing what we must not do, and so to think about other ways of doing things, what is other possible ways of doing things. And I think when you have such a strong personal purpose as is doing things differently, doing things in a way that really aligns, or in such a way that we align our needs with the needs of the planet, well, fashion is a tool for that. Or the company you work for is a tool that will help you to find solutions to those challenges. But there are so many challenges in the world. We could change hats so many times and work in so many different companies trying to find different ways of finding solutions, so that in this case fashion, as you say, shouldn't only be good for us, it should actually be good for the planet. That's what's most important. Thank you very much. Over here? Let's continue then. You're Director of Circular Economy at the Waste Agency of Barcelona, Pilar. And Pilar, going through your professional track record, I have seen a constant struggle in favor of the environment in some areas such as recycling, renewables, and the circular economy. In your case, Pilar, what is that struggle, that mission that you're on, and how do you channel that in your current position? Well, when you told us 8 questions in advance, I was thinking, and I reached the conclusion that maybe there are 2 keywords that motivate me personally to do what I do. First is responsibility and a public service vocation, or a calling to public service. So, and how have I gotten here? I'm privileged. I have higher education, and this has been through the effort of my family. Actually, I'm the first person in my family who's had access to this higher education, so I have a responsibility, and I think I have a debt to society. I have to give back. And maybe also because I'm an older sister, the oldest of 3 sisters, and I think this, well, really impacts your personality, and I'm also a mom of 3, so these also marks you, this impacts you, and it makes you feel the responsibility of trying to help change the world, and that future generations can receive an inhabitable, livable world, and as wonderful as it can be. And also the public service calling. For me, it is very important to try to exercise this responsibility, to try and do my best to transform our society from the public administration with all of its advantages and disadvantages. We have here examples of private companies, and it's absolutely essential that private companies are in this struggle as well. But I think for me it's very motivating and important to be able to do so from the public administration, to contribute to this transformation, to manage the money that belongs to all of us in the end for this common good. Personally, I believe it would be a bit more difficult to find motivation from a private company. For me, it is additional motivation. This public service is an additional motivation. Well, thank you very much. Let's then open the next round of questions. There's something that comes up time and again in the conversations where I participate as part of my work at Vila, because I collaborate with companies in different sectors, and I talk about the importance of sustainability not being something isolated and not integrated in the business. And it also requires a work of involvement of many different areas and people within a company. So from that perspective, and from your perspective in the organizations where you work, how is it work of integrating the different areas of the organization to align agendas which I guess run in parallel to the sustainability agenda, and that really doing your bit little by little, taking small steps? How is the process and the learnings that you have achieved over the years? I may start if you want. Yes, that's good. We change the order. I work in the public administration, especially specifically in the waste agency, the waste management agency, and in our mission we include fighting for this transformation towards a circular economy. This is in the definition of our mission, in our mission statement. But on the other hand, we're also the administration, and maybe the administration, the most traditional vision of the administration as controller, authorizer, sanctioning authority, which must be there as well, because there are laws created precisely to pursue these goals, and there must be someone out there watching over. and making sure that all of this works. But the administration, specifically the Waste Management Agency and the administration as a whole, has evolved and is evolving so much. And aside from this role, this watchdog role, which is necessary, there is a process of accompanying, dynamizing, training, awareness raising, the role of a catalyst to generate transformation in citizenship and other administrations and organizations, which is taking place, and it's important. A colleague who started working in the Waste Management Agency a short while ago, she said, well, I'm surprised that you give an answer and serve anyone who comes knocking. And yes, that's a role as an organization, as the administration, anyone who has the will to improve. The Catalan Waste Management Agency can be there to help raise awareness and even to provide subsidies to reach this transformation. And I'm almost done. There is coexistence between the traditional administration and this administration, which is maybe a bit more proactive and dynamic. And sometimes we are slower than we would like to be when conducting our business, but we need to grease the machinery so we can be more agile, because there's no time to waste. Yes, this tension between how things were done and how things are done and how we leverage all that. Thank you very much. In the case of a company such as EcoAlf, how does this challenge look like? Well, I think we have a bit of an advantage because we were born with sustainability in our DNA. And I feel that this means internally things are done differently, per se, by design, because we do not conceive sustainability as a department or as part of a strategy of the company. The general strategy of the company contains sustainability, includes sustainability, is aligned with sustainability. And for me, there's a magic word, and I'm sure it will be familiar to you because of B-Corp world, which is purpose. I think sustainability without a purpose is just complying with the regulation. And if you want to go beyond that, you need a purpose. And that purpose is related, for example, sometimes people do not understand it, and I say it's very simple. What's the challenge you want to overcome? Why are you here? What do you want to achieve through your company? This will set your purpose, and your purpose is related to how you're going to solve or overcome that challenge. And when that's clear to you, it's much simpler, much easier that everything that happens within the company move in that direction, in meeting that purpose, because then everything you will do will be consistent with your strategy and with your foundations, with your sustainability foundation. And I think sustainability is a lot easier than it looks when you change your mindset. Sustainability is not about complying with regulations, following guidelines, or following a checklist. I think sustainability is a change of mindset, a complete change of mindset. When we've integrated that change of mindset, and when you really start thinking as a company or as a citizen or as an individual, a consumer, a person who lives and consumes and generates impact, when you start understanding that everything you do at all levels, personal, professional, has an impact, and that impact has a direct impact on the planet, and therefore you, because you are not an island, you're part of the planet. Nature is not something that is just there and we need to reconcile ourselves with. We need to learn how to reconnect with something that we're a part of, which is nature. Until now we have experienced these as two separate concepts. But when you understand that everything you do has an impact, and that impact can be negative for the planet, and that it will in turn be negative for you, for your children, for your grandchildren, this is when you really integrate sustainability in your daily life, and this is when you then from there on out you don't need to fight people so that they meet protocols and follow standards protocols. That's the true change. And then you realize that within entities, organizations, even in entities such as us, we were born with that ingrained in our DNA, well, there are people who don't really feel it at any point. So, and if you don't really feel it, you will simply comply with the sets of rules and regulations, but you will not go beyond. And going beyond is related to innovation and what else can I do to provide a more efficient solution? How can I go further? What's the next challenge I can face? And for me, that's the difference.
Muchas gracias.
Well, thank you very much. Your turn. Well, so the question was how we incorporate sustainability in our company, in our everyday life. Yeah, and also, in your case, it would be interesting to understand how you collaborate with other organizations. This collective action, I would like to get deeper in that later on. Well, as an organization, our climate change policy permeates all the organization. For example, in mitigation access, we have a roadmap towards neutrality, and this roadmap has some partial objectives of catching and storing emissions. And it is also we also do this climate implication. We incorporate this variable in our decision-making processes. We boost this capacitation, this climate capacitation with our staff. And also, this is also about the second question. We have to go far beyond, and the climate commitment has to go far beyond the organization. And we have to communicate this in order to facilitate the process to the surroundings and to facilitate these spaces to boost this commitment, this climate commitment far beyond the organization. Some examples from the water company. Institution-wise, we involve them in the co-creation process, in the roadmap towards neutrality, and also with suppliers. In May, we launched the Hub of Climate Action, and it's space to share knowledge, to share good practices, to create synergies. And it's open to all the suppliers, not only our suppliers as a water company. So we have to boost this commitment, this climate commitment, with all the different groups, with the citizens as well. We have launched with different municipalities some workshops. We act towards the climate. That's a goal, to awaken, so to say, what I said in the beginning, that everybody gets to know the context. Why are we in this situation of climate emergency, so that they also commit at an individual level. Thank you very much. So we have two questions left. How you collaborate with other groups, and also related to the cultural change, changing the paradigm and the mindset. Maybe we can start with this collective action, and how do you work outside your own organizations in order to generate an impact of a higher and bigger scale? I can give you an example, which is a good public-private model. It is the circular fashion agreement. Carol talked about fashion, and I guess you all know the situation, the impact of the textile world. Between 2015, the production of clothes has doubled in the world. We consume clothes that last less, and in Catalonia only 10-12% of this waste is recycled, and 90% goes it gets burned or dumped. So it is I don't know how to describe the situation, but we have some regulations. We have the Waste Act that talks about the responsibility of the producer from 2025, also from the municipalities to collect the waste. But we know we cannot wait. It's so catastrophic that we have to start working. So what can we do? We should reach a voluntary agreement with the companies and public and private organizations that are engaged in the value chain in order to start doing things. Apart from the objectives of the regulation, we need to take steps in order to improve the situation. And in May, we signed the Pact for the Circular Fashion with more than 70 organizations of all types of sizes, producers as Mango, Pronobias, smaller ones, and waste managers, the textile industry, municipalities collecting clothes, technological and research centers, and we have co-built together during 1 year this commitment. So which are the goals that we can have? It's something voluntary, but we have to achieve this prevention goal, selective recycling and durability of clothes, and you can find everything in our website. And I think it's a good example. It's a good way of, it's a new way of collaboration between the administration, the private actors, and how we can reach further. If we reach a consensus, if we have common goals, and doing obviously a follow-up, and also some responsibilities, and abiding by all the things you have pledged. And if you are interested in joining us, please be in touch, and we hope we can give you some results. It's a different way to move towards this sustainability and an efficient use of resources. Very interesting. Do you have any initiatives of collective actions with the public sector, with the administration? Well, we are aware that sustainability has to go hand in hand with alliances. So we are here thanks to all the things we've done together with our suppliers. And we don't like to call them suppliers, because thanks to them and thanks to the interaction with them, we have achieved a lot of things. And also, we have boosted the mobilization of these technological advances, and now we face a lot of problems like circular economy, and also the clothes recycling, the microfilaments. And you have to be in a group, in a consortium of companies, public or private companies, public and private, incorporating research and technological centers. And it is the only way to do it. But sometimes they are very slow initiatives, and makes things even more complicated. We have started to decide where we are, exactly where we are, because we don't want to burn out, and sometimes being in endless meetings makes us feel frustrated. Sometimes we focus in smaller teams, in smaller groups, in which it is easier to generate destruction and start these immediate changes. But we are aware that we will not get anywhere alone. And in B-Corp, companies are very collective in initiatives, which you feel you have found a platform to interact. Well, the 2030 net zero commitment, we meet regularly and we share the initiatives and the best practices that we are implementing. We are facing new challenges for all. It's not that someone has already done it before. It's new for all of us, and we have to move towards the same direction, or we will be late. So this is the example in the B-Corp community. That's when I feel that the community is moving forward and generating accelerating the change. The role of collaborations and the role of the conversation and opening up to other publics, it's something strategical and that requires additional efforts. So interacting with organizations, with other purposes, with other agenda, it can cause some friction. If you want to go further away, you have to go together. If you're going to go fast, you can go alone, but you will not get that further away. And also, with the other conversation that we had before. So how can we change this paradigm? Carol said so. Sustainability without a purpose, it's just a checklist. And we need to put some soul and to put a sense in it and understand it from another perspective. So how can we change the paradigm? Internal, external, individually. I like this question. It's a cultural change. We will not achieve this ecological fair transition, and this cultural change allows us to measure the social contribution and the climate contribution. And linking it to the previous conversation, so that the ecological transition is fair, it needs to include the gender perspective, for example. And we know that climate change has different impact depending on the different groups, different communities. It has more impact on women. 80% of climate refugees are women, because 70% of people living in poverty are women. And if we add that there is not enough representation, we are a minority in the decision-making organizations, and we are a minority in the most polluting companies. It means that we have to make a double effort, also including the gender perspective in these new jobs that are creating in ecological transition and in more intensive fields like construction or transport. And it is true that in STEM careers there are more women, but there is still a long way to go, and it is important to keep on awakening this interest in young women, in teenagers, and interest towards engineering and other careers, and also to choose some role models. So it's like a space, like today's space. I would like to add that in the Waste Agency of Catalonia we have a department. It is the Observatory of Waste and Gender Perspective that is focusing on these problems and this need to diagnose, first of all, because we have to know where we are. And there are a lot of women in this world, but we are a minority. But we are not at the top of the hierarchy. And this is what the observatory is doing, diagnosing the situation and also saying which are the actions that we can take in order to incentivize the presence of women, and how the waste policies and the raising awareness campaigns are including the gender perspective. Because as Andrea said, it is important, this feminine perspective of the solutions. We can give a different perspective that was ignored in the past, and this feminine vision, not only from women but from men also. I would like to add, because we're running out of time. Well, to me there are two fundamental things. Sustainability is balance, and when we talk about balance, we need to think about gender balance and many other balances, but also, as my colleagues were saying, this feminine vision is going to help us to understand this connection, reconnection with nature in a different way. and it also makes us closer to this holistic vision with a more feminine energy related to love, to heart, that complements the energy from the past. And secondly, in this balance, also questioning the status quo. So what you do in the organization, we have to think it and rethink it again, rethink everything. Because if we continue doing things the same way we were doing them in the past with small changes, but we don't wonder, is it really important to do what we are doing right now? So it's not only improving it, but going to the foundations and also thinking if what we did in the past has brought us here, does it make any sense to just improve it? Or maybe really what we need to do is go back to basics and then try to create something new that substitutes what we've been doing in the past, because we know it doesn't work.
Bueno, nos queda un minutito.
We have
¿Hay
1 minute.
algunas preguntas? A lo mejor podemos escuchar dos y
Maybe
más
2
quienes quieran
questions.
pueden responder. Hay algunas manos ahí levantadas.
Muchas gracias.
Well,
Me
thank you
gustaría
very much. I would
preguntaros
like
porque
to ask.
estoy muy de acuerdo con
I
todo lo
really
que habéis
agree
hablado
with
y
what
sobre todo
you
la
all
colaboración
said,
público-privada, que
and also
es
the
muy importante.
public-private
Pero
collaboration,
me
very
preocupa
important,
que
but I'm
se
concerned
ha hablado de
because we
responsabilidad, pero
talk
no de
about
greenwashing.
responsibility,
Y
but not
creo que
about
también
greenwashing.
es muy
And I
importante
think
que
it
cada
is
una de vuestras
important that
instituciones sepa
your
cómo
organizations
combatir
know
la
how
falsa
to
publicidad,
face
los
this
falsos
false
compromisos.
publicity, false
Vamos a hacer algo
commitments.
holístico, pero ¿qué
We are
vamos a
going to
hacer,
do
no?
something holistic, but
Me
what
gustaría
are
muy
we going to
brevemente qué
do?
es lo que
So,
estáis haciendo un
what
poco
are
para
you
el
doing
greenwashing y cómo
for
las colaboraciones
greenwashing and these
público-privadas
public-private
pueden
collaborations
dar más
that can
responsabilidad, porque
give more
yo no
responsibility?
tengo fe en que
Because
las
I
compañías
don't have
privadas
faith
van a poder
in
hacerlo todo
private
por su cuenta.
companies
O sea, ayer
doing
pasó
things
lo
on
de
their own.
Patagonia y estamos
You
todos
have the
en plan,
example
wow,
of
una empresa que no
Patagonia. I
quiere
say,
dinero
wow, a
para
company
ellos y
that
que
doesn't
lo va a
want
hacer.
money for
Entonces,
them,
greenwashing, ¿qué
and
estáis haciendo y cómo
what
podemos
are you
combatirlo?
doing to fight greenwashing?
Vale, quería ver si hay alguna otra pregunta.
I don't know
o
if
sea,
there are any
para
other
poder escuchar dos y
questions,
que
maybe
después
2
con libertad
questions,
podamos
and then
responder.
we
Tenemos
can
un
answer them. We
minutito,
have
no
just
puedo
1
pasar
minute.
demasiado, pero como para poder abrir. Había una pregunta por ahí también, ¿puede ser? Sí.
Sí, o sea, mi pregunta era
So my
directamente para Carol. Yo lo
question
siento,
for
tengo 3
Carol.
preguntas, pero bueno, solo voy a hacer
I have 3 questions, but I will only
has
ask
dicho que
one.
eres fan de B-Corp, bueno, en mi
So
caso yo
you
no soy
are
fan de
a
B-Corp,
supporter
porque,
of
bueno, creo que
B-Corp.
está
I'm
certificando
not,
empresas
because I
que
think
no
that they are
deberían de
certifying
tenerla.
companies that shouldn't have this
Como por ejemplo
certification.
CaixaBank,
Like, for example,
que está
CaixaBank
invirtiendo
investing
fósiles,
in
todo el
fossil
impacto que supone
fuels
eso,
and
o
its
Danone, que
impact,
mata
and
al
Danone
año, al día, miles y millones de
killing
animales, con todo lo que contamina
millions
esa parte.
of
¿Cómo crees
animals.
que ¿Qué credibilidad te aporta
So which
B-Corp
is the
a
credibility
EcoAlf
of
como empresa, ¿no?
B-Corp,
Sabiendo que estás
knowing
poniéndote a la altura
that
de
you are
otras
at the
empresas que
same level
contaminan
of other
muchísimo y
companies
que
that are
matan muchísimos
polluting a lot
animales?
and that kill animals?
Pues, bueno, yo creo que tenemos que ser también tolerantes con el momento que vivimos, ¿no?
Well, we have to
Creo
be
que
aware
las
of the moment
transiciones
we're living in. So
precisamente van de eso, de que no
transitions
se puede pasar
are
del todo
this.
a
We
la
cannot
nada a todo,
move from
en un
0
día
to 100 in one day,
pasar de lo malo
and
a lo bueno
from bad
sin
to
pasar
good
por lo regular.
without going through average.
Yo no me
So,
declaro como empresa o como la
and
empresa que represento
the
aquí
company I'm representing here, I am not 100% sustainable. We are not. And Danone kills, I don't know if they do, because it's not my company, but I can defend what we do. We do our best, and but there are some things that we don't do right, and because we cannot reach there, we don't have the technology to do things better, our resources don't allow us to go any further. For me, B-Corp is a movement of companies taking steps in order to do things better. And so this makes me different from the companies that are doing nothing. I don't think any companies in B-Corp have said that they are perfect. The B-Corp certification you need to fill in and so on gives you a roadmap that will help you improve. So I think that in this sense, we are attacked because we are doing something and somebody doesn't like it. We are not perfect. We try to do our best, but we are going to make mistakes because we are human beings, and human beings are not perfect, and companies are not perfect. But at least there is this intention in order to make things better and keep on improving. And I feel very proud of being B Corp, and I feel that they are accompanying me because we are going through challenges and frustrations. And I am in charge of sustainability in my company, and sometimes you have to make decisions. Maybe they will not be the best decisions for the planet, but they will allow you to keep on being a company and advocating for the things you are defending. I'm talking about balance again. You have to be supportive with people who make an effort, although we are not perfect.
Muchas gracias.
Perdona, respecto al greenwashing, si quieres...
Yes, about greenwashing, we are behind the schedule. I fully agree that it's a big problem and it can burn the credibility of the consumers. And from Generalitat, we are doing the consumption code of Catalonia in order to approach these greenwashing practices, and also in the pact towards the circular fashion, the companies in this pact have some quantitative commitments. It is not just a declaration of intent and I'm super green and that's all. No, there are some goals that can be quantified. They have to inform and give us a report about it and justify what they've done in order to achieve these goals. And well, you can use these voluntary agreements to wash your image. Yes, maybe yes, but as Carol said, all companies joining this pact are willing to improve. We need to respect them and help them. Oh, thank you very much. Just one thing more. So in the end, when you do climate action, you generate some evidences that are tangible. And maybe it's greenwashing or not, but if you say that you are reducing these emissions with this concrete project and then you are audited, it is tangible, it is moving to action. It's not just talking about sustainability and we are super green. And the climate action has to go hand in hand with evidence and transparency. So I'm going to close because I'm representing Beloved Spain, and we could continue this conversation in another space. Just to remind you that as Carol said with transparency, that the B-Corp Corporation is a strategy that we have in order to evolve this economic system from the business perspective. So these are the main pillars that all the companies have to achieve in order to be included and be certified by B-Corp. And like, for example, transparency. All the companies that are B-Corp have a public profile. You can have access to the profile and know how they achieve the certification. And there is also a standard in environmental and social development. And they are not perfect companies, but they are companies that have achieved this standard and also legally, they are legally committed to make these decisions and to be and become better companies. So this is why I think it's very interesting to keep this critical idea. We are reflecting upon it, and there is a participatory process now. It's open to all of you. We want to understand which are the requirements and that we are going to ask for the companies that want to be certified by B-Corp, because we need to evolve and we need to be more exhaustive in our standards. So I invite you to check this out, and also it's time to close the session. Thank you very much to the three of you and the previous two speakers. It's been very fruitful. We've been able to listen to very important reflections, questioning the status quo, and then how we can translate it into different organizations, different industries, public, private perspective, and many more. So thank you very much, and I hope to see you again very, very soon.